the space of transportation, with all of that data and statistics that have come out, we need to figure that out. And we've put a panel today to start that discussion and conversation with you all. So we have first Iana Tassada. See, I practice all day, still mess it up. Iana Tassada. She is with J.E. Dunn Construction. She's a VP of the Aviation Group, over 13 years at her company, and a Georgia Tech graduate. Next to her, we have Keli Kemp, one of my sheroes, co-founder of MARTA Mobility Partners. So big shout outs, Keli, for starting your company and growing it so fast. With over 20 years of consulting experience in transportation planning, travel, demand modeling. Next, we have Ms. Justina Mann. She's the Interim Director of Capital Development and Assistant Director of Procurement and Supply Chain Management at the Houston Airport, correct? Yes. So welcome to Atlanta. She brings us over 14 years of contracting and procurement experience. She has a Bachelor of Science from the University of Minnesota. Very cold place. Love it, though. Obtained a Master's of Project Management from Keller Graduate School of Management and has several leadership development programs under her belt. So welcome to Atlanta, Ms. Mann. Kirsten Mote, Program Director of Aerotropolis, one of the Atlanta CIDs. She is the Program Director there, but also has been in the community for a while, and so we all know our friend Kirsten. And where she is the Project Manager of Aerotropolis, and where she was former transit planner with H&TB, and 2 years in her current position, she has managed transportation, land use, community improvement, economic development, and is doing a great job over in that area, so we appreciate all your work. And one of our newcomers to transit and transportation, on the transit side, rather, because you've been in aviation for years, Mr. Franklin Rucker, who is the Chief Capital Program of Planning and Innovation at MARTA. He's responsible for implementing all of the transit expansion plans for the authority, but he comes with 37 years of experience of civil engineering, design, and project management at various aviation facilities and industry around the world. So, Mr. Rucker, thank you for joining us today and being the sole man on this wonderful panel of girl power. So I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves. I just did a quick intro of them, and so that you'll really get to know them, and then we'll start getting into the panel discussion. And so, Iana, we're going to start with you.
Good morning. Not sure, can you all hear me? Okay, not sure if these are working. Good morning, my name's Iana Tassada, and I'm very honored to be here today and be part of such an incredible organization. I graduated from Georgia Tech with a civil engineering degree and have been with J.E. Dunn Construction my entire career, so I was very lucky to find that place. J.E. Dunn is a large commercial contractor nationally, and we've been focused on aviation for the last 6 years, and that is what I wake up thinking about every day. So my role is to help grow aviation as a market for our company. So that involves recruiting, really leading the strategy and helping with pursuits, developing teams to ensure that we execute these projects well. And so outside of that, I really care about our MCD program, which is my Minority Contractor Development Program. I work closely with China and Sherelle within our office, helping develop that program, ensure that we have great MWBE participation, not just in our projects that there are goals with our clients, but within all of our projects within the Atlanta office. So I'm excited to be here today. Thank you.
My name is Keli Kemp with Modern Mobility Partners. As Rhonda mentioned, I've been in the industry about 20 years. My background is in transportation planning and travel demand forecasting. And about 16 months ago, I went out on a leap of faith with the co-founder, Jennifer Zahn, and we founded Modern Mobility Partners, which is a full-service transportation planning firm with looking through a lens of emerging technologies and the paradigm shift that we're really going forward in transportation. So we are a DBE firm here in Atlanta. We are fast-growing. We have tripled in size from 2 to 6 over the past 15 months. And we're hiring a few more here in the summer. So if there's any budding transportation planners or engineers in the room, let me know. We're always looking out for good talent. So happy to be here. Thank you.
So, good morning, still morning. Good morning, Justina Mann, and I came to Atlanta yesterday from Houston, where I have been for 6 years as a procurement officer for the Houston Airport System, which of course is a 3-airport system. We have Intercontinental, Hobby, as well as Ellington. People forget about that one because it's just general aviation, but it is really cool because it's going to be a spaceport. So I've been there for 6 years, and I'm on the edge of letting go of the procurement role. I'm doing dual roles right now to be the Director of Capital Development for the Houston Airport System. So I'm very excited about that. But of course, I'm going to be very excited to fold procurement into the capital development side so we can kind of get a heads up on these projects. So before Houston, I was actually in Atlanta, and I worked for the Atlanta Airport System, where I was the procurement manager, airport system, Atlanta International Airport, please excuse me, for 4 years. And before that, I was with the Atlanta Housing Authority for 10 years. So I'm very excited to be here in Atlanta. It's been kind of like a class reunion. When I was at the reception yesterday, I had some people that I haven't seen since I left Atlanta. But I'm very excited to be on the panel. I want to thank Jan and, of course, Daphne for having me as well.
Good morning. My name is Kirsten Mote. I'm the program director for the Aerotropolis Atlanta Community Improvement District. I've been there for 4 years, kind of at the ground level. We started the Community Improvement District, and for those not familiar with what a CID is, we're basically an HOA for commercial and industrial property owners. We're located right around Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. We cover about 15 square miles. We answer to a board of directors made up of property owners, and they direct us in the types of projects that they want to see that they believe will raise kind of the collective value of the area, raise their property values, and promote economic development overall. So we operate in 4 key areas, public safety being one of them, beautification, transportation infrastructure, and signage and wayfinding. And so I'm over everything except the public safety. I leave that to my police officer coworker, but happy to talk about some of the technology that we're using in that realm that we are also able to coincide with some of the transportation improvements as well. So I'm happy to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Good morning, Frank Rucker. As Rhonda said, I've been around 37 years, so within the city of Atlanta, the majority of that time at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Been overseas doing some work, and now I'm back at MARTA. So this is my first venture into the transit world, and I would say it's quite different from working in aviation. So it's a big learning curve. Basically, my reputation is working with a diverse group of contractors and basically trying to get everybody to succeed. My record is probably proven, where we've come up with some very creative programs to actually get a diverse contracting field and trying to set people up for success. So I'm glad to be back home and look forward to participating.
Thank you. So with all of the growth in traffic, not only in Atlanta, but across the country, one of the things that I would like to ask you all, what are some of the top trends that we're seeing nationally and also here in Atlanta regarding transit, transportation, and aviation? So, Frank, you want to start? We'll come back this way.
So the first thing we would like to point out is that there's not a trend to really, it's fewer projects that deal with the heavy rail system, especially around the city. You may recall in the Gwinnett referendum that didn't pass, there was a 5-mile extension of the heavy rail system. But the cost of heavy rail, anticipated to be somewhere around $250 million per mile, is driving the industry to look at different means of transportation. So we're moving more. And one other thing, we're getting not as much federal participation. So at one time when they built the MARTA system, there was 80% participation in all projects from a federal side. Now that's basically 40 headed down towards 30. So it is cost prohibitive prohibitive. So we're now looking at other means, light rail, what we call bus rapid transit, arterial rapid transit, where we're looking at basically cheaper ways to actually move people around the city. A bus rapid transit would be more similar, well, light rail transit and bus rapid transit could be similar, where light rail is actually on a fixed guideway. Bus rapid transit would be more on rubber tire, but dedicated lanes, traffic signal prioritization, off-board fare collection type activities, elevated platforms, et cetera. So moving to a less costlier means of public transportation is where that trend is going.
Awesome. Thank you, Frank. Anyone else want to jump in on some trends?
I was just going to kind of tag on to that Frank had mentioned that we kind of got to do more with less. And, there's definitely a trend of really leveraging more public-private partnerships going forward, and not just with say, managed lanes, for instance, on the roadway, but across all modes. And I would just also mention that if you think about the Ubers and Lyfts, the ride-sharing companies or transportation network companies, I was just thinking about what have I seen that's had an impact on transportation, and aviation. And I could see ride-sharing have an impact on all of them. Aviation, if you think about it, you're not parking as much at the airport. How does that impact the airport's revenue stream? I would imagine you might have some thoughts on that. Mm-hmm. And then, with transit, with first and last mile connectivity, and then with just transportation in general, if you think about curbside management and the curbside becoming prime real estate. So that's just wanted to dovetail on that.
Okay.
So, of course, in aviation, we have everywhere aging infrastructure. So as we are looking at master plans that anticipated slight growth, and we have trends, of course, that have more growth than was anticipated, the master plans don't necessarily connect with the trends that are going on. Say, for example, the TNCs, the transportation companies, the Ubers and Lyfts, the curbside management. Then we have the technology in the actual airports we're moving towards. I was reading something the other day about, on one side, it was somewhere in California where they were putting a ban on facial recognition or use by government organizations. And then I read something in Michigan where they were enhancing their facial recognition programs. But in aviation, of course, there is, I imagine there'll be a time where we will be checking in with just our faces. And if I leave my driver's license at home, I won't miss my flight again. But generally speaking, a lot of the design, concepts that were anticipated to be like the cutting edge and it's going to make it so exciting and enhance the customer experience is now being revised, and it has to be modernized even more on an ongoing basis. So even some of the trends that we were looking at in the last year when we're deciding what we're going to do in our terminals and what we're going to do for our customer experience from when they pull into the airport system to when they get into the gate has changed, even with our concessions and what they offer, having someone to order from their gate versus having to go to the different restaurants. I don't know how many people have been to the Houston airport system, and I'm sure we have it somewhere in Atlanta where you order from an iPad and you sit at the gate and then they bring your food to you. So there's a lot of less back house operations that are in the middle of the airport, and that gives more room for us to have seating or hold area where people could be comfortable before they take their flights. Of course, we don't have the same turn times as we have in Atlanta, at least Bush, that is. But there's a lot of exciting things going on. Of course, it's enough to keep everyone busy between infrastructure and technology and, of course, procurement.
Thank you.
So Rhonda,
go ahead.
Just to that, just the use of technology, what I'm hearing, it's just going to be big and will continue to get bigger as we progress in the future.
Yes. And what do you all think about these autonomous vehicles or autonomous everything that's going on? I mean, how will that impact the industry? Is that something that we see that next 3 to 5, or are we talking 10 to 15? I know in the space of transit, you go to FTA, they're not wanting you to do any heavy rail or those type things because they're saying all of this new technology is coming. So on the technology side, how do you see the emerging technology in this space? And then how do we use technology to help curb some of these prices that you all are also talking about? Aging infrastructure and all of those things. How do we use all of this stuff to deal with, on top of that, this population burst that we're about to have.
That's
a lot.
That's a lot.
So on the autonomous vehicle question, I think you're going to start seeing more and more of it. I'm not convinced that everything's going to be autonomous in the next 5 to 10 years, but at the Aerotropolis, we're already focusing on those emerging technologies and how do we modify our infrastructure to accommodate those things. We recently put in a grant application with MARTA and some other partners for an automated driving system down at the airport that would actually be autonomous 40-foot buses between the international terminal and the College Park MARTA station. And we're hopeful that we get that grant, that we're expecting award announcements early summer. But that will be a truly autonomous, driverless system operating in mixed traffic, going from an airport terminal through a business district where the Delta Airlines headquarters are located, by a school, Woodward Academy, and to one of the heaviest traveled MARTA rail stations at College Park. And so if we're awarded, that demonstration will take place in 2021. So we're actually talking about 2 years away. On top of that, we're also looking at other applications for autonomy or automation all along the Virginia Avenue corridor, which I'm sure we will get into a little bit more in detail. Keli is helping us with that project, as well as implementing shuttles in all kinds of applications. And it may be that autonomous shuttles are the right answer for some of those areas.
Rhonda, I just want to add that we, at MARTA, in our current expansion plans, we are also looking at a couple of BRT routes, which will basically feature autonomous vehicles. So, definitely technology that we're exploring.
That's
Something
awesome.
really cool at the airport is we have in Houston, the airport system in Houston, we had some colleagues of mine, executives, to go up to the College, Texas, one of the Texas schools, there's so many of them, and College Station. And what they were pitching is in line with the autonomous vehicles. And one way that we were thinking about implementing it at the airport system is where we would use those for baggage handling. So when they're bringing your luggage to the actual planes, there's a lot of accidents, of course, that cost a lot of money when you're talking about people driving those carts. And if they bump into an airplane, and there's a considerable amount of risk when they're down there. So a way to use the autonomous vehicles, and they set up these beams where they can move that luggage and move where they're having maintenance crews to come out, where it's automatic, and therefore you can reduce the amount of risk. And so we're looking at, of course, the younger generations, the millennials, or all of the interested parties to kind of give us feedback on it. And I thought it was kind of cool when we went out there, a lot of the ideas. The other thing, of course, when we're looking at increasing our footprint at the Houston airport system, at Bush in particular, we were looking at having a train system. And of course, the systems, I think our airport is 50 years old. We just had an anniversary celebration. And the tunnels, of course, where we have room to build a new terminal, there isn't a way to connect it. And so we were looking at if we would use autonomous vehicles to connect the airports. And not necessarily have to dig a tunnel or put anything above ground. And of course, that would reduce expenses as well. So kind of cool ways to apply that in the airport system. Get excited.
One thing I just add, just to answer your question about timing a little bit, which is always up for debate. I don't think anyone's in agreement as to when exactly it's going to happen. But from what I've seen and researched, it seems like there's going to be a phased market penetration. You hear a lot about transit opportunities with autonomous vehicles, and that seems to be the low-hanging fruit that, over the next 3 to 5 years, you might see more in transit with autonomous vehicles, particularly in that first and last mile connectivity with the micro shuttles, where it can hold about 6 to 12 passengers, whether they're sitting or standing. And there's several different pilots of those across the country and abroad, where it's not in mixed traffic, it's in a controlled environment. What Kirsten mentioned is going to be in mixed traffic, which I believe may be the first in the country. of that kind. But then you're also going to see it then transition to shared, the ride sharing, so autonomous ride sharing, the Ubers and Lyfts, would kind of be that next phase that would increase the comfort level of riders as they kind of get used to it. But as far as private ownership of autonomous vehicles, I think that's much further away. And millennials these days, one of the trends is they don't have as much of a desire to own their own vehicle. Some of them don't even want to get a driver's license. So I think private ownership could be much further away, but that the transit use and the ride sharing is sooner rather than later. So there's a lot of activities going on around that.
I would like to add on the construction side, we're definitely seeing technology play a much bigger part in how we build buildings, build the airports, build infrastructure, and we're really seeing robotics starting to play a bigger role in that as well. Our resources are scarce, even though, we're growing as a population. There's not as much of a demand or desire, for people to get into the construction industry. So we're looking at, how can we prefab a lot of our materials and building systems, in a factory. And, even, we're seeing robotics starting to play potentially a role at our construction sites as well. So that's going to continue to be something that we watch and see impact this industry.
Great. So as you can see, I keep doing all these long, loaded questions, so I'm going to continue that. This was going to not be as crazy as the last one, but what are some of the most critical challenges we're seeing in transportations? And then give me some of your thoughts around some of the solutions that your industries could possibly bring. So kind of out of the box thinking just a little. So what are some you see like most critical challenges, and then what could be some potential solutions to those challenges?
You want to start? Again? Okay. Well, I think, talking about emerging technologies, I think one of the challenges that we're facing is at what point do we stop investing in expanding our roadway network and focus on the maintenance and installing technologies that are going to interact with connected vehicles or autonomous vehicles. We're already seeing that the desire is not to invest our money in widening roads, but it's to think about other modes of technology and how can we solve solutions without just more pavement and concrete. And that's challenging because we do know that congestion is going to continue for some time, but we don't know how long. So at what point is the return on investment worthwhile? So I think that's probably one of our primary challenges right now.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. You said it earlier, Rhonda. I guess we're looking at a 40% growth in the population over the next 20 years, and we can't build enough roads to accommodate that.
Right.
Already, we're sitting in traffic, hour and a half a day each direction. So definitely investment in public transportation. It has got to play a major part to that. If you take the examples of Los Angeles, where they are now basically investing $120 billion over the next 40 years. So if you look at an annual spend rate, $3 billion a year to actually improve the public transportation system. Again, a series of light rail, BRTs, et cetera. It's got to be the way we have to go in this region.
Right.
We hadn't, the magnitude of traffic that we're facing is something, of course, we've never seen before, and it's only going to get worse. So all you got to do at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, take a trip down 75 South, 85 South, and
Yes.
how much time? So,
Right.
if you feel like sitting in traffic for the next 3-4 hours, 10, 20 years from now, well, we had to make those kind of decisions.
That's right.
So even more on a molecular level, we have issues, of course, with materials. Still, we have issues with resources, people, and therefore contractors and availability because the infrastructure is aging everywhere. We're having issues with getting competition for some of our bids and therefore paying higher prices. So some of the solutions, of course, that are in play, and I think there's some that are going on in Atlanta where we have this on-the-job training. So we're doing that in Houston where we're partnering with the local colleges. And by the way, that was Texas A&M and College Station that I was trying to think of earlier. I was channeling my inner mother when I had that memory loss for a second there, which I'm sure they would be very mad if I said that in Houston. But anyways, we are trying to work with local colleges as well as high schools to get people to study trades, to be able to fix and repair, or even be interested in the aviation industry. We have a high school program, Aviation Club, where actually, in one of the projects that I have run in the past, this is my first year not doing it directly, but our intern program at the Houston Airport System, we had as many as 50 interns one year. So last year we had 35, and we had some of them were from the high school, and they had competed in a project, but we're trying to get people interested in aviation. I never thought about aviation as a career. As a matter of fact, Joe Jackson introduced me to aviation. I was just in procurement. And so we just want to put that in front of people so they can, we have, of course, a very mature workforce. That's the way we're calling it now. And so we want to make sure that we have some succession planning with that. And then with the issue with the contractors and the resources, we're trying to do as much advanced planning as possible and get the word out about, we're open for business at the City of Houston and, of course, the Houston Airport System. But when we were talking about the spaceport, I mentioned that earlier, as a part of the whole spaceport infrastructure that we're building, we have a lot of contracts out there. One of the projects that includes actually putting a training program in universities, a couple universities on campus that will be at the spaceport, that will be training to make repairs and to build and to be able to go into space and everything associated with the spaceport. So as we're building the infrastructure, we're trying to get the word out and get people interested, and then have facilities in play to be able to support anybody who's interested, or to make sure they're interested in being a part of the spaceport. Because it seems like pie in the sky for some people, but if you go to our website, flytohouston.com, we have a video of it. When you click on Ellington, it's actually really cool. George Jetson, but really in a couple years kind of thing.
That's awesome. All right.
Hold on.
Oh, okay.
I was just thinking, just the resources, labor, contractors, and Iana, you ought to kind of say something on this. You look at GDOT studies, basically the resources available when you start looking at the projection of work in the region, it's tremendous. It's a great shortfall. I know at MARTA we want to become that authority of choice where the contractors want to work for us. Iana, what do you
I'm glad, you said that, Frank. So traditionally, I think transportation as a whole has not been the easiest place to work. Working at airports, working at MARTA, it can be difficult. So it's important to partner with contractors to really want to be, and help them through the learning curve, so contractors do want to work there. I mean, we work really hard trying to bring outside trade partners, subcontractors to the airport, because there's a ton of work going on outside the city with private developers. It's a different way of executing work, and to convince them to come down to Atlanta Airport or MARTA to work, it can be difficult. So we do a lot of partnering sessions and trainings. We try to bring new trade partners in, really walk through, okay, here's, the steps that you're gonna have to take to work here and be successful. We really encourage a lot of the work at the Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport is done at night. So we really encourage our trade partners to figure into their proposals, paying premiums, to really incentivize quality workers to be down there at night, and come up with bonus programs, because it is hard to find those resources. So we just have to think outside the box on how to really incentivize it and make it easy for these companies to succeed there.
So one thing that we're doing at the Houston Airport System that we are finalizing right now is, of course, the competitive landscape is, the same people keep getting the same work. No offense to you big guys in the room, but what happens is that there are smaller companies that don't get a chance to get the experience because they don't have the direct contracts to their subs. So one pilot that we're doing, we called it a pilot to downtown to get them to approve it. But bottom line is that we have a small on-call design contract. So with multiple firms, where it'll be IDIQ or task order driven work to smaller firms, and the requirements for entry wasn't we were able to reduce that, whereas if you just had a state or a government contract and some other relevant experience where it's not aviation specific. So at the end of these 5-year contracts, well, I think we're going to let, I can't say the number. But anyways, when we let these multiple contracts at the end of it, then those firms will be able to compete for larger contracts in the future with Houston Airport System and even other airports. And so with the success of this, then we'll try and do that with our planning, our on-call planning efforts, of course, with on-call environmental, and hopefully we can get something similar to what you had, Frank, with the MGC.
I was just thinking about that, Justina. That sounds familiar.
Yes, yes. Frank, of course, within a month of my coming to the Atlanta airport and came, and I met with him, and he gave me the real deal, Holyfield. This is what you got to do. This is what you got to focus on. And I have gone back to that conversation several times. But anyways, we can't get the MGC program in Houston, but we're trying to do some small construction and make contracts so we can get a lot of the smaller firms who weren't previously able to compete for the bigger contracts to get in on smaller projects and then eventually build up their capacity or their ability to be competitive for the larger contracts.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so let's just stay on that. Frank stole my little thunder because that's what I was going to try to have my next question to be about: succession planning, workforce development, some innovative programs that you can bring in, because we have a lot of mixture of folks in the audience, folks that own their own businesses. So how do they get into these places? And then how do we find and start preparing this next group of folks to come up behind us, right? What are we going to do? What are we as an industry going to do? Because if you talk about this industry, most of us kind of fell into transportation, didn't really go to school for transportation. And so how do you prepare this next generation to actually prepare for transportation because of all of the stuff that we know that's coming out?
You would have to ask me a hard question. I've given that thought over the course of my career, and whether it's professional services or basically working with the contracting construction community to actually think about succession planning. I mean, that's a big issue.
Yeah.
First of all, when you look at typical heavy construction, so whether you're talking about vertical or heavy highway, it's not what we call the most desirable thing for millennials to do, right? So the first thing we got to change the perception out there in the industry, and basically educational programs to basically encourage our young students to actually pursue work from professional side, architectural, engineering, from construction side, being contractors, and understanding how valuable it is to our society. I think Justina brought up a good process. So the on-call, when we started doing on-call developments at Hartsfield-Jackson, we were targeting smaller firms, right? Which didn't have the experience, but we wanted to basically build that, give them the experience so they could go on and move to become better competitors against some of the major firms. Same thing with the on-call contractors, small contracts where you could actually get the bonding, you could get the experience and continue to grow. I think we got a long way to go to actually make it successful, but I was just writing down some numbers here. Around the region, I would think we typically probably did somewhere around $1 billion to $1.5 billion of work on an annual basis. That's all agencies combined. So now we're looking at doubling that, in some case possibly tripling that. We go back, GDOT has $1 billion program a year. We want to try to do about $600 to $700 million. The airport is always doing $4 million. So we really got to get out, as owners, clients, we got to get outside the box and really think about how we basically deal with succession planning, whether it be internal. I'm 62 years old, 63 years old now. And so looking for the next group that will basically be the responsive clients, looking for the next contractors that will take over and build this infrastructure that's steadily decaying. So that's a real question, and it's something we as an industry will have to solve.
I just want to add on to some of the stuff that Aerotropolis is working on from a workforce development perspective. There are a lot of job opportunities that we've discussed, and what Aerotropolis is trying to do is work directly with the school systems to start implementing training programs at a much earlier age, so not even high school, but all the way down to third grade, and start looking at what are the types of jobs that are going to be coming in the future. We think that construction will continue. Transportation will, of course, continue, but what are some of the other areas? And for Aerotropolis, it's hospitality is a major industry. And so we're already starting to see Clayton County and Fulton County schools implement these college and career academies that are focused on those specific trades, rather than putting everybody on a college preparatory track. In addition to that, the Aerotropolis has initiated several workforce development programs, training programs for adults that focus on those key industries, and it is targeted towards residents of South Metro. And so you have to live within specific zip codes in order to attend these training sessions. And at the end of the training sessions, both the construction and the hospitality cohorts have found that they have job placements in the 90% range. And so we're starting to see a lot of success of being able to do job placements. And I think we're going to have to continue to grow these programs in order to fully have that succession planning for South Metro.
So I'd like to add a few things just from a construction standpoint. J.E. Dunn, probably like a lot of other companies, start very young too with trying to identify or help show that construction and engineering is a great career path. So we participate in a lot of STEM events. We work with organizations like SEFCA, to really show construction and trades as a very viable career path. We also internally, we do a lot of self-perform work. We have probably over 1,000 trade workers, and over the last few years, we've really adjusted the way we invest in them. We're an ESOP, an employee stock ownership program. All of our trade workers are part of the ESOP as well. We have really focused on training and making sure they have access to our emails and our portal, and really helping them hone their skills so they can continue to grow and be part of our succession planning. And finding people that want to be out in the field is hard now. So if they see that as a viable career path, that's helping fill that shortage.
Okay.
I'd just add, as an owner of a small firm, we've found as we've grown to 6 people now. But we bring on actually a lot of interns. We have 3 coming in, 3 more interns, and we end up hiring them this summer from Georgia Tech. And so we spend a lot of time with them trying to groom and coach them as much as possible, because, our firm is more focused to some extent on emerging technologies, which is very attractive to a lot of the folks coming out of the planning programs around the country now. And so we have found that, as a smaller firm, we can't, pay as much as some of the big dogs, but what we found is that training is really important to them. And so we make sure that we commit to having a robust training program with them, both internally and externally, and to help with that succession planning. So
That's awesome.
So in Houston, we have the intern program that I talked about. But what I found out is that when we had the interns and developed the program, so in some cases based on their interest, it was a rotational effort where they would, work at hobby airport, airside, landside, ground transportation, which of course is nobody's favorite when they're a student. They don't want to work outside. But the bottom line is they would have these great summer internship programs. I had a very competitive rate that I paid that I structured for the interns to have, but then they were not eligible to actually have a job at the Houston airport system after their internship. So we kind of had to have a conversation, myself and the HR director, to say, okay, so how do we set up where we can get these students where they're prepared or actually in a place where they can qualify to have a job at the Houston airport system. So what we were looking at is kind of having them where there's opportunity for them to come back multiple years, but then in addition, creating positions at the airport system that allow the students to come in, because we did have a couple of them that were able to get a job, but they didn't last very long because what the jobs that they were eligible for, these people are graduating, cum laude and all that stuff that I wasn't. But bottom line is that they're coming in at these entry-level jobs, and it was not keeping their interest at all. And they had student loans, et cetera, and then they had managers who weren't necessarily in tune with the student needs or honing their skills and their innovation and everything that they brought into the table. So we're kind of trying to develop a program to whereas we can do something year-round, not necessarily interfering with their studies. But whenever I say I work for the airport, people are like, "You're Delta or United?" No, ma'am. No, sir. I think I'm a stewardess. Like, there's actually jobs at the airport system. So we kind of have to make it bite-sized to the younger generations that aren't aware of the actual opportunities. A lot of people that are more mature, please excuse me, that work at the Houston airport system, their dream was being a pilot, and so they wanted to work for the airport. Or they were just so excited about airplanes and used to watch them. Well, I didn't have any of that. But I have a very exciting portfolio at the Houston airport system that I get to take bites at every day that I wouldn't have imagined if I wouldn't have been otherwise exposed to aviation. So I think one of the biggest things when you're talking about resources and getting the younger people is having champions for your organizations that go out and speak to the high schools or go speak to programs or go be a part of career development days at the different schools or trades even, not even just high schools, and just making it real to them. So when they see real people associated with it, because they're not looking at, oh, well, I want to go work for MARTA when I grow up. What they know about transportation is it takes too long for me to get to school and work, or I'm in traffic too long, or don't let there be a festival and then I can't get to where I'm going in a reasonable time. But they're not necessarily always thinking about, okay, maybe I can go work there and make a difference. And so maybe when we make that palatable to them and have these real conversations and smaller settings, then we can get more people who will be in those environments that'll be champions, extended past the folks that we send out to the communities, and then we will create this tidal wave of students and even some mature adults who hadn't thought of it before to come and be a part of the succession planning in our different industries.
Thank you. So I know I have questions up here, and they're like, you are not saying any of the questions we have on our sheet. I've been all over the place. I'm going to continue in that. So one more, and then I'll get back to the sheet. For everyone that comes to these type events, right? So we come to these events, and some of us know how to network. Some of us don't know how to network. Some comes because they hear opportunities coming on. They want to get on different teams. What is that process? Give us some best practices. How do people network? And then if I have a small firm, how can I be in meetings and networking when I need to be doing the actual work? So how do I balance and do all of that in this world and then be very successful? Is that another one of my crazy ones? That's too much?
No. I'm going to take a little bite-sized portion of that and reserve the right to come back. So anyways, one of the things that I always talk about is we have these industry days where we invite businesses to come up and we tell them about upcoming opportunities, and sometimes they're up to a year out, sometimes just 3 to 6 months out. But if you're looking at partnering with someone and you meet them at that event, I always think, well, these people probably already know who their partners are going to be. So how are these people actually going to use this as a networking opportunity? I recall when I was transitioning from the housing to the airport, I met all of these people. I knew them by face, but I had not connected with them beyond when I actually see them. And so I had to change the way that I even networked as a professional. The same is true for businesses. So we say, okay, we're gonna post the sign-in sheets and everybody indicates if they're a prime or a sub and you can have access and reach out. But to me, you have to know well in advance of the opportunity what it is that you're interested in and reach out before it becomes published. And then say, okay, this is the niche that I can bring to you. This is how I can help you achieve potential contract goals or participation goals or even performance goals. And when you have this networking and you go beyond just sending, I had someone say, well, you told me to talk to so-and-such and I sent them my profile and they didn't respond. I said, well, they probably got 11 profiles in their inbox. Did you ask to have a meet, to have a conversation? When people hand me a packet of their stuff and I'm like, I know this was so expensive to print. I'm gonna give this back to you and then I will read your email or I will forward it to someone else because I know those marketing materials are a huge expense, especially for smaller firms. So just looking at differently, I saw someone that had a card. It was a Texas-sized card. It was this big, literally a business card. It was bigger than the palm of my hand, and that stood out. And I remember that that card and that person that was on that card. So you have to continually reinvent how it is that you meet people, not just wait for an industry day. If you even go to conferences like this, these are unique opportunities. Say, for example, I'm unplugged from the office outside. I have my iPad with my notes in front of me. This is the only time where, rare times where I can actually have conversations with people. So if you go to conferences like this, you have to use the actual, not just have my homecomings and reunions that I mentioned, but also challenge yourself to meet a certain number of new companies and follow up after the actual event and be ready to compete before the competition begins, I think is one of the things that I would say.
That's a good one. All right. Somebody else, give me something.
I'd like to add to that. So I would agree 100% with Justina that if you wait to say the RFP or RFQ comes out, in most cases, the team's already set. So as a small business owner, you know, what we do and what we found is successful is that we try to find out about the opportunities well in advance on our own. We don't rely on other firms to tell us about them. The larger firms, we go directly to the clients that we want to work with and meet with them ourselves and figure out where can we provide value and differentiate ourselves. And then we reach out to our relationships with different potential teaming partners, or they reach out to us. But those relationships with other firms as well as with the clients are so important. And I think that's what's really helped us in the past year grow, is because we've been building those relationships over the years. But if you don't have those relationships and you're networking at a conference and you really don't know where to go next, LinkedIn is a beautiful tool. And, you know, if say you saw a speaker or someone from a distance and you didn't get a chance to meet them, you know, you can reach out to them afterwards and connect and go have coffee. And just because you may have one opportunity in mind that you were thinking about teaming, that may or may not work out, but it opens up the door for discussions on other opportunities down the road. So.
And I would just add to it that, at least in Atlanta, I can't speak for all the cities, the transportation network everybody's pretty nice. Like, people are usually willing to have a conversation with you and are not going to just ignore you. But I would argue that you're not going to be successful in what you do if you don't network, if you don't find people that you can actually build relationships with. And it's not just going and having coffee and having a conversation. It's about really trying to find connections with people, because they are good people, and you're probably going to find, you know, some of your best relationships and some of your best friends come out of the transportation network. I have a much bigger appreciation for what consultants have to do now that I'm on the more public sector side. And I think if I went back to consulting, I would have a much different perspective on business development. But I just think that, you know, you can't be afraid to just go out and have a conversation. I know that me personally, if any consultant wants to come and talk about opportunities that we have, I'm happy to do that. And I would say that's probably true for most of the public sector.
Wait, an informed conversation though, because one of my biggest pet peeves is someone comes in like, well, I do this, and I'm like, okay, great. So, but I need to be able to relate that to my environment, and this is wearing my procurement hat, because I'm not the one that decides what we need for the airport system or wherever it is that I am. I'm just the one that provides a means to an end for it. So if you can come and translate and say to me, okay, I have this wonderful technology and it can help increase your customer service experience by saying, okay, well then I can connect you with our director of customer service, our director of marketing and branding, et cetera. So there's so many ways that sometimes opportunities where if you haven't researched to see what that company's need is and how you can connect to that or provide a service based on the research that you've done or what you know their pain points are, then that networking opportunity was just lost. It was just a friendly face and someone that will take your call, but they won't be able to recommend you for a contract or recommend you to one of their colleagues or fellow executives who would be interested in your service if you don't make that connection.
That's awesome. Anybody else? All right. So Kirsten, we're going to start with you. I'm back on my sheet now. Focus. Can you share an update on Aerotropolis and what's in the future that the future holds for your CID?
Yeah, so I've mentioned a couple things that we're working on, but you know, we work on all modes, and specifically we're focused a lot right now on freight and transit and bicycle and pedestrian. The one thing that we don't hear is, hey, we need to widen this road. It's all about how do we come up with out-of-the-box solutions for these other problems. So, I think that on the freight side, we're looking at a freight cluster plan. It was funded by the Atlanta Regional Commission, and it's really thinking about how does freight move in and out and around the district, and how do we make that the most efficient, as well as safe for the community, because there are a lot of conflicts currently between freight and automobiles or freight pedestrians. So those are some solutions that we're trying to find. Transit, we're looking at all sorts of transit solutions. We're looking at micro-transit solutions, so on-demand based. We're looking at autonomous vehicles. We're looking at BRT, ART, and bike ped. We're focused on building out a bicycle and pedestrian network. We've identified 350 miles of trails in the Aerotropolis, and we're currently focused on 8 of those miles, trying to get those in development and under construction. So we got to start somewhere, and I think starting with 8 miles is a pretty good start. And we're able to partner with each one of the cities in South Metro to develop a trail segment that's important to their community. And so we just submitted an application to ARC for funding the next phase of these trails, and we are proud to say that 7 cities partnered with us, and we put in 1 joint application with 7 cities. So we're really excited about that. But the future of Aerotropolis, I think, goes back to what we were talking about with technology and focusing on 21st century infrastructure. Thinking about how technology can be applied to solve some of these solutions. And one of the projects that we're really excited about is the Virginia Avenue Smart Corridor. So we're focused on 3 areas: mobility, safety, and walkability along Virginia Avenue, which is where Delta Airlines is. There's a number of hotels. It's just north of the airport, so there's a lot of airport traffic and visitors. There's Woodward Academy. There's residential neighborhoods just off the corridor. And so we're really not focusing so much on, the sidewalk widths or, the pavement. It's really thinking about the technology that can be applied to solve those solutions. And we've come up with 34 potential solutions. So Keli and Modern Mobility Partners are the prime consultant on this project. And she can provide you all the details and ins and outs of those technologies. But yeah, we're looking at 34 different types of technologies right now that could be applied to solve those problems.
That's awesome.
Annual basis of some sort of rehabbing the existing system. Okay, so it's 48 miles, 38 stations, and we spend quite a bit of money maintaining what we call a state of good repair. As we go in the future, we will be looking to double our annual output. So basically looking to try to put in place about $600 million on an annual basis, both state of good repair or maintaining the existing facility, which is the core system, and looking at expansion. So as we talk expansion or state of good repair, going through a project life cycle, we got to look, first of all, at overall project management. We're going out for a solicitation for what we call a PMO. That will be coming up within the next couple of weeks. As we go into design cycles, we'll basically be going out for designers to help us actually do the A&E work associated with any kind of expansion, whether it be expansion or basically maintaining the facilities that we got. Of course, at that point, we'll move into the construction realm. And again, we talked enough. We need your support, and we want to be the client that contractors within the region want to work for. So we're looking at all type of delivery methodologies where we can begin to partner. So some of the things we put in place in Hartsville, I'm trying to actually bring to the agency to see if we can implement. After we do construction on the base MARTA system, then we look at transit-oriented development. And that, if you notice around MARTA systems now, around the stations, you got all kind of development going on associated with that transit station. So it's a continual life cycle. In terms of actual projects, one of the things that are coming up pretty shortly, we're going to rehabilitate all the 38 stations, and we're going to start with some construction. We're going to try to do about 6 a year. We got multiple track renovation projects, which are really more specialized, dedicated type efforts, but we'll be building new maintenance facilities. We'll basically be looking at shelters and amenities. We're waiting on DeKalb County, Fulton County to actually finalize their transit plans. And at that point, the 4 major jurisdictions within the city that support transit, whether it be City of Atlanta, DeKalb County, Clayton County, or Fulton, we'll be putting in place, in terms of capital expansion, somewhere to $6 to $7 billion of work over that period of time. So we're
big
quite
numbers.
excited about that.
That's exciting. Y'all heard billions,
And
not
when that comes
B.
on board, they'll
B.
build another 4 to 5.
Not M, B. Y'all hear that? Okay, all right. Iana, so what type of projects are you working on? Aviation projects, transportation projects? What are you doing in your industry and what are you working on right now?
So at the Atlanta airport, we are doing a couple projects for Delta Airlines as part of the Concourse T North expansion project. Their ground support equipment facility needs to move to enable the expansion. So we are getting ready to break ground on that next month. We also completed our airside modernization work with them last year, but they continue to do some scope additions to that project, so we're out there continuing to do that for them. Outside of Atlanta, I'm working on pursuing projects at Charlotte, the Tampa airport, helping our teams in Texas, also with Houston Airport System, trying to pursue their work there, as well as Austin and DFW. So a lot of my focus is really on strategy for growth.
That's awesome. All right. Let's see who else. Justina, what are you working on in Houston? And I know you've been to Atlanta and Houston. So you can give us the differences of those 2 airports and then some of the projects and opportunities that you all have in Houston.
So, of course, Atlanta is the world's busiest and most efficient airport. But Houston is also a 3-airport system, which of course has some very unique opportunities. With the 3-airport system, there's opportunities for synergies with what we purchase and how things are done. They're of course in different parts of town, so there's, I remember when we were doing the hobby, when we were making that international terminal, and we had the, I don't know what the name of the tree huggers there were, but they had an issue with the palm trees that we put, and we had to have a management district that was created in order to manage that whole process. So each airport creates a unique set of opportunities to really stretch your professional, the implementation of your professional expertise. One thing that when I talk about Atlanta, people say, which one do you think is better, Atlanta or Houston? I'm like, oh, it's two completely different experiences, which it is, of course. Upcoming opportunities or initiatives that we have at the Houston Airport System, and I always have to remind the Chief Development Officer that, of course, procurement is for other than infrastructure as well. So most of my examples stay on that because that's everyday conversation. Our International Terminal Redevelopment Program, which is a $1.23 billion where we're demolishing. One difference, of course, in Houston, Atlanta is United is the heavy in Houston versus Delta is the heavy in Atlanta. So the way that the relationship is structured with United in Houston is that they will manage and even up to their concessions and of course their construction for some of the things. But there are also pieces that we have to do for the where we have common use carriers. So we're demolishing and remodeling terminals. We're demolishing a parking garage so we can create some address some curbside management issues that we've had experienced. We're expanding our FIS. This is all part of the iTrip scope. Expanding our FIS. We're modernizing our ticketing and checkpoint, as well as have some opportunities for roadside repair. We have a domestic terminal redevelopment program where we have a baggage handling recapitalization, so that's out for bid, the design of that right now. No, excuse me. We decided to do that differently. We switched gears. So we're going to design that internally, and then we're going to put that out for construction probably in May of this. That's May. Jesus, that's next month. Oh, these people are so aggressive with these timelines. That just was that little outburst there. Sorry. I'm going to have to talk to some people when I get back. Our modernization of Terminal A, which was the baggage handling recapitalization, is $56 million. Our modernization of Terminal A is $200 million, and we're going to be expanding at Terminal 8 gates. Terminal A, which is where Delta, American, Frontier, Spirit, and I can't remember the other line, but anyways, we're expanding 8 gates there. That's going to be to the tune of $240 million. So for the whole domestic terminal redevelopment program, it's $390 million total. So that math didn't add up. So when the chief development officer was saying, I was like, isn't that more like 750 something? We're not doing all of that at one time. So that's near-term spend that we're talking about with the domestic terminal redevelopment program. We're also going to have a CONRAC, Consolidated Rental Car Facility at Hobby. That's going to be between 120 to 150 million, depending on the location that we choose for that. So we're looking at 3 locations. We're going to do the planning through our on-call planning contract, and then we'll go out for bid for that. At Ellington, the spaceport, we have a new taxiway that was approved. So therefore, we're going to be going about building out at Ellington some infrastructure. We have energy initiatives that are to the tune of $2.13 billion. That's where we're going to do LED lighting retrofit, major retrofits for the baggage handling system, our satellite utilities plan at Hobby, as well as solar panels on our parking garage. We, of course, have, that's all my infrastructure stuff, but we, of course, have on-call IT consulting services that's probably going to advertise this next week that's coming out. We have our normal O&M contracts, our baggage handling and maintenance support, which is separate from the recapitalization program that we have. We, of course, have I think we recently did a couple of our regular O&M, but coming up soon, we're going to be looking at putting performance-based goals and objectives in some of those services that we haven't done before, and that is taking some retooling internally before we can get that externally, so we've had to rebid a couple of efforts, which is, of course, painful for everyone. But anyways, a lot of exciting opportunities and projects.
Awesome, awesome. So Keli, I'm gonna let you close us out. And then we're gonna open up the floor for some questions. So if you had a crystal ball, where would you see this industry headed over the next 3 years?
3 years. Well, we talked a lot about emerging technologies, for sure. And I think that so there is a difference between connected and autonomous vehicles. And so I think that over the next 3 years, there's going to be a lot more activity in connected vehicles. And Kirsten had mentioned the Virginia Avenue Smart Corridor that we're leading. And this is a perfect example of how quickly something can happen if it gets momentum. We started the study in January. It doesn't end until September. But we've already got things being implemented right now. And that relates to upgrading upgrading the signal so that they have communications, bringing them up to kind of the state of the practice with 4G routers, and installing software on them that GDOT's doing at no expense to the cities, which is phenomenal. And upgrading the whole corridor so that way we can synchronize the signals. But what's more important is that it will set the foundation for the future to make it easy to implement some of these more advanced emerging technologies, and some of that low-hanging fruit is transit signal priority and emergency vehicle preemption. So I went down a rabbit hole a little bit there, but what I want is all that to say that's now expanding to the 3 cities that traverse the corridor, and Kirsten's doing great championing that to the rest of South Metro, and it's all happening very quickly. And I think that once folks start seeing these opportunities, it's going to be more further widespread quickly, because it's a very low-cost solution that can help advance our transportation infrastructure. And as Kirsten mentioned earlier, I think there's becoming less of a focus on adding major new capacity and more of a focus on doing more with what we have using technology, and that's a perfect example of that. And just this whole Internet of Things, connecting everything to everything, is going to be a major trend going forward in the next 3 years.
Gotcha. Yes.
One thing, and Lau would actually kill me if I don't mention this, but mobility as a service. All right, so basically how you have a seamless, end-to-end journey. So, you only have, one means to pay for it. You just
Right.
decide how you're going to do it, and
Right.
you deal with convenience of the actual travel experience. It's something that's really going to be pushed in the future.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Again, utilization of
I'm
technology.
so glad you mentioned that.
Yep.
Yeah, 'cause then you can plan, ticket, and pay for your trip all in one app, all across modes, all across operators, and I think definitely going that way.
Awesome. So we have about 10 minutes before we close out for questions. Do we have any questions for the panelists? Any questions? Okay. She's gonna bring in a mic. It's not on? The aviation guys? Okay. All right, well, let's see if we can hear you.
My question, thank you for sharing what you have for everyone, but my question is for the MARTA and Rocket. We haven't seen expansion of MARTA in 40 years, and I can see where new stations and the BRTs do, but can you expand on what light rail means and what can we expect seeing?
Okay, Guillermo, light rail is, of course, a different means of fixed rail transit. So if you call heavy rail, and this, remember, I'm just learning this. So.
You're doing a good job, Frank. Doing a
So
good job.
heavy rail, of course, is on a fixed track, dedicated right away. Where light rail is actually look at different means of propelling. So with a heavy rail system, it's faster speeds. Again, dedicated right away. Each car is self-propelled. And with a light rail system, it's more of a different means to power that vehicle, right? And for the most part, a vehicle actually propels the car. So basically, one is actually powering the other system. Am I right, Ron?
Yeah,
All right.
that's right.
All right. Now, you and I talked about that, by the fact it's a fixed guideway. There still is a level of expertise to actually install that type of system, where if it's a rubber tire, it's more, where you're dealing with systems along the route, dedicated lanes, et cetera. So as we go, you and I talked about this, and it's a good thing to share. We need to look at the different aspects of the construction of a light rail system, see what has to be specialized type work. So if you're doing track work, what makes it specialized, and see if we can actually do training programs to the contracting community to basically engage more people in that type of activity. As we've known, it's a real specialized service to actually work on a fixed rail system. So I think one of the things, we'll have some workshops that begin that discussion and see if we can start some training exercises where we can get more vendors engaged versus the one that traditionally actually do that kind of service there.
That's awesome.
Again, succession planning is the key there.
That's awesome. Another question?
Hi, good morning. Working?
We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think it's very interesting. This is coming from a person that is just relocated to the States. It's very interesting, this type of workshops. One of my questions is, we talk about innovation and mobility and all these growing of the cities that is it looks like it's growing faster where we can provide any source of mobility, right, to the cities, to airports, transportation. What is I see that some of the challenges, we have a project, we know the necessities that we need to cover, but we don't have, like you mentioned, with some of the construction companies, they're not there yet. We lacking a little bit on the manpower to develop some of the projects. So I see in this new also phase on progressive design build, are we towards more develop that type of project more than the convention lump sum projects where the project is done and we put it to bid, or we more like integrating the different subcontractors and general contractors earlier in the stage of a project. That way we have that period of time that we develop a project, we put it to bid, it's shorter and more faster probably to develop that type of projects. Or I think here the key word would be this program design build, how efficient you think it is and how important it is coming on this era where we're growing so fast, faster, what we can provide transportation.
So innovative financing, then doing design build and other type of innovative things to expedite the process. Is that what you're saying?
Right, yeah.
So y'all get that?
So let me try to answer that question.
Okay.
We have to begin to look at different delivery methodologies, okay, which include the financing aspects of it all. So if you take a place like Hartsfield-Jackson, you know, at Hartsfield-Jackson, we've actually incorporated, we do traditional design bid builds. We do design builds. We actually have done a number of construction management at risk. We also are doing progressive design builds. So typically, and we hadn't done P3s, but people can talk here on the panel about a P3 development, you know, which basically deals with the financial aspects of it. But I will say we have to continue to look at ways we can utilize those alternative delivery strategies, because it does, you know, what we're trying to do is not, it's about who controls the risk, right? So as the owner, you know, when you're actually looking at utilizing that different alternative, everybody has to balance their risk. I think owners need to take on more responsibility for the risk and begin to share and work with contractors to actually, you know, create a positive working environment. You know, that's one of the key things. Iana, would you say that's the key to success?
Absolutely. And, you know, as a contractor, we prefer SEAM at risk or design build because it really gives you the opportunity to partner up front and really be aligned in your goals and understand, you know, the client or owner's objectives, and gives you more time for planning as well, you know, to really help deliver a successful project.
So with that, you had to change the culture also. So you know, in the culture, I'll always say the foundation of any cultural change is trust. So basically developing that relationship of trust between you and your contractor as you go forward.
All right, thank you. So we're out of time today. So thank you all for coming to this great panel. Give our panelists a hand. Give yourselves a hand.